Members, the ayes are 64, the noes are 57. Part 1 as amended will stand part. We now move to debate on Part 2. This is debate on clauses 22 to 27 and Schedule 2. The question is that Part 2 stand part. Grant Robertson.
Thank you, Mr Chair. This is just going to be a brief call, and it's actually in the nature of a question for the Minister, hopefully. This is partly because I wasn't on the Select Committee. I know that's much to Mr Latoinga's regret that I wasn't there, but I wasn't, when I was looking through this bill, quite able to understand the impact of Clause 27. And these are the transitional arrangements for financially disadvantaged people. And essentially what Clause 27 does in various parts is allow for regulations authorising the provision of financial assistance to any people who are financially disadvantaged as a result of the net effects of the amendments made by Part 1 or Part 2. And this is able to be done in two parts of this clause by the Chief Executive of the Ministry of Social Development and also by the Governor-General by Order in Council. And it seems a curious clause, Mr Chair, because other parts of the transitional provisions entitle some rollovers of the youth payment or young parent payment, but this and some issues around the domestic purposes benefit. But this clause seems to be placed here for a reason of some description. Firstly, it presupposes that there are people who are going to be financially disadvantaged by Part 1 and Part 2 of this bill. And it's quite clear when we look at Part 1 of the bill that we do in fact see that there are a number of changes, obviously, around eligibility for particularly the youth payments and the young parent payments, and also, as was earlier raised by Holly Walker, questions around the sanction regime on those payments. And what I'm looking for clarification here from the Minister and the Chair is exactly who is intended to be covered by Clause 27 of Part 2 around transitional arrangements for financially disadvantaged people. Because while some transitional arrangements are being made for those on the youth payment, there must be somebody in mind with this particular clause. And I would like some clarification from the Minister. Are we talking everybody who is financially disadvantaged? Is it the government's intention out of this bill that nobody will be financially disadvantaged? That would be an interesting position for the government to take, particularly in light of the sanction regimes that are outlined in Part 1 of this bill. We on this side of the House are obviously concerned about the impact of these changes on young people. The government has a particular agenda that it is pursuing within this Part 1 of this bill, and now in Part 2 they're saying if you're worse off, there is the possibility of transitional arrangements. So the questions I have for the Minister and the Chair is who is designed to be covered by that? Are we talking about people who are in receipt of the young parent payment? Some transitional provisions exist for them in Clause 25. I don't know if that's everybody who has been getting it up to now, who now won't be getting it, or is it for others who are perhaps in receipt of the youth payment and aren't covered here, who will no longer be in receipt of that payment. The government, I presume, has done some work to understand the impact of the changes that it's making, who it is who will not now be in receipt of these payments, and to have a transition clause like this one, Mr Chair, indicates that the government obviously has something in mind in terms of helping those who are financially disadvantaged. So the question we have for the Minister and the Chair is this everybody? Who is it? And who do they intend to apply it to? And it seems to me, Mr Chair, that having made a decision to have a clause like this in the bill, clearly there are people who will be financially disadvantaged. But I also want to know how this interacts with the sanction regimes that are mentioned here, because clearly some people will end up being worse off as a result of this bill. And obviously on this side of the House we find it hard to understand that the government could be so focused in an environment where so many young people are out of work, where there are so many young people who would like to be in training and in work, that they are focused on the punitive side of the regime here. They're not focused on ensuring that we have people who are being given assistance But in these transitional clauses, it gives some hint, Mr Chair, to the fact that perhaps there is some consideration being given to those people who are doing that. So really what I'm looking for is some clarification here from the Minister, as someone who wasn't on the Select Committee, who is envisaged to be covered by the transitional arrangements in Clause 27, and I would ask the Minister to take a call and let us know.
Mr Chair. Call Dr Regime Prasad.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Again, a very brief call on clauses